Have you ever had a conversation with someone that makes you question what's real? And I'm not talking about a spiritual conversation or any sort of cosmic connections. What I'm talking about is gaslighting. And I'm about to break down the two types of gaslighting, along with the phases of gaslighting and the common phrases that you might hear. And at the end, I'm going to share my number one tip for dealing with gaslighting in the moment. Because really, there's only one thing you can do that's going to have any impact. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina, and on this channel we talk about emotional abuse, spirituality, self-help, and more. And if that sounds good, and if you'd like to see more videos like this one, hit that subscribe button and be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified whenever I post new videos. That way you won't miss a thing. And if you do like this video, please hit that like button because that actually helps YouTube know that it's a valuable video that more people might want to see. All right, let's jump into gaslighting. You've probably heard the term before, and maybe you have a general idea of what it means. Maybe you're well versed in gaslighting, but I can tell you there's a lot of confusion about what gaslighting really is. And it's no wonder because gaslighting is kind of like an umbrella term. And at times it can feel almost like the shapeshifter of emotional abuse terminology because it can be so many things. It can come in so many forms. But the common thread among all gaslighting tactics is that they make you question your reality. And now I have a video that explains gaslighting pretty well, pretty thoroughly. So if you're interested in that, if you really want to learn more about where the term came from and what it means, and I have some examples in there too, I suggest you watch that video. Now, I'm not going to repeat most of that stuff here because I know that a lot of you have seen it already. And if you haven't, don't worry, there's still time to catch up. I'm going to pop the link in the card and in the description below. Okay, so there are two types of gaslighting. And the first type you may not be as familiar with, which is interesting because it's probably the more common type. The first type of gaslighting is unintentional. And this is the gaslighting that you might even have been guilty of doing at one time or another. And I'm going to give you an example so you understand what I'm talking about. Maybe I'll give you more than one example. So think about the child who scrapes his knee. And he just goes on and on. It's the worst pain he's ever felt in his life because he hasn't lived very long, you know? And then there's the parent who, with good intentions, tries to teach the child not to overreact. Let's not overdo it because you want your child to be able to handle things, right? So the parent might say something like, it doesn't hurt that bad, or it's fine. It's really not, it's just a little scrape. It's not a big deal. But to the kid who hasn't felt a whole lot of pain in their life yet, thankfully, it is a big deal and it feels terrible. So you're telling them that what's real to them is not actually real. And this is one that I think we've probably all dealt with as children and maybe we've even done as parents. And it's done with the best of intentions. It's not done to hurt the child in any way, but it is still a form of gaslighting, and there are probably better ways to approach situations like that. Another form of possibly unintentional gaslighting is, let's say that you are trying something new. You're trying maybe skateboarding, or maybe it's a project at work and you're struggling with it. You know, it's easy for someone else, but for some reason there's just something that's not clicking for you and you're not getting it. And you tell someone else and they say, well, that's the easy part. Like, I don't understand why you're struggling with that. That's really easy. That's like a soft form of gaslighting too, because what you're struggling with is really hard. Your reality is, man, this is difficult. And they're telling you that you shouldn't be struggling with this. This is not hard at all. So you end up feeling like there's something wrong with you. Like, okay, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get this? This person is telling me everybody can do it and I can't. So the unintentional form of gaslighting, it might be done with good intentions, or it might just be done just kind of off the cuff without thinking of how something is going to affect the other person. Now, the other type is different. The other type of gaslighting is malicious gaslighting. And that is very much intentional, although the person might not think well, hey, let me manipulate this person. I'm going to gaslight this person. The person who's doing it might not even know really what gaslighting is by definition, but it's just kind of in their nature to manipulate people and situations to their benefit. So somebody who is emotionally abusive is going to be guilty of malicious gaslighting, and that's what we talk about most on this channel. When we talk about gaslighting, it's really the malicious type of gaslighting. But that emotionally abusive person could also gaslight unintentionally too, and there's nothing to say that they couldn't. But so the malicious type of gaslighting is really, it's manipulative. It's trying to get somebody under control and or to change their behavior to suit the abuser. All right, so those are the two types, unintentional and malicious gaslighting. Now we're going to talk about the phases of gaslighting. According to psychoanalyst Robin Stern, there are 3 phases of gaslighting that are present in a relationship with a gaslighter, with an emotionally abusive person. Those phases are disbelief, defense, and depression. So in the disbelief phase, that's kind of when the gaslighting starts showing up. And you're thinking, well, that person, it must have been unintentional, right? You know that sometimes people gaslight unintentionally, and you think maybe it was he didn't mean it that way, or she meant something else. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe I heard that wrong, it came out wrong, whatever. You kind of make excuses for the thing that person said that kind of made you feel bad. And at that point, you don't quite let it shake you. You don't quite let it question who you are, or, you know, you're kind of still standing firm, but you just don't believe that that person meant anything by their comments or their behavior. So in the defense stage, you are starting to lose your certainty. You're starting to lose your grasp on what's real for you and kind of starting to take on what the abuser wants you to. So you're starting to believe the gaslighting, but you are still holding on to your defenses. So during this phase is when we have those conversations where we try to be logical, right? We try to logic our way around this gaslighting. You know, the gaslighter says, I didn't do this. And you say, but I saw you do it. I saw it with my own eyes. And you try to provide as much evidence as you can. And if you don't have evidence, maybe you think like, okay, well, let's talk to somebody else because what you're saying does not sound right. It sounds completely off. And I think anyone else would think that. You try to logic your way around the gaslighting because you think that you're dealing with somebody who might be logical. And the thing is, it's not that they can't apply logic, it's that they don't want to. So they're not going to, they're never going to. So the next phase, depression, is when it really starts getting to you. It starts eating away at your sense of self, at your self-esteem. You become very uncertain and insecure, because you have somebody who's constantly making you question yourself. So you're not really sure if you're capable of making decisions. And it's important to note that these phases can overlap. You can easily flip-flop between disbelief and depression. It's not necessarily in sequential order, but those are the 3 phases of gaslighting. Okay, so let's get on to the common phrases. So if you're watching this channel, I think you probably have been gaslighted before, and maybe repeatedly, maybe for months, maybe for years. So I think that you probably are going to relate to some, if not all, of these phrases. And for each phrase, I'm going to try and give some variations, because even though we talk about narcissists a lot and they're very predictable, emotionally manipulative people who gaslight are also very predictable, whether they're narcissists or not. And so even though they're so predictable, they may not say verbatim what I'm about to say here, but it's going to be some variation of this if you've heard this type of phrase before. So the first phrase that gaslighters use, and it is super, super common, is "you're too sensitive. Everything bothers you. You make a big deal out of everything." And, it's possible people can make big deals out of nothing. That could happen. Sometimes maybe we're even guilty of doing that. But when this is present in an emotionally abusive relationship, and when gaslighting is present and consistent, it's usually used to get the person, to get the target to back down. because what they're trying to get you to back down from actually is a big deal. It could be something like cheating or lying about finances. And, they'll take a little kernel of it and they'll say, well, there's just this little thing and you're making a big deal out of it. But it really is a very big issue. And so when you hear that, when you hear you're too sensitive, you start thinking about, well, I'm too sensitive compared to who? Am I too sensitive compared to everyone? Does everyone think that about me? Do I make a big deal out of everything in my life? Are other people just not telling me this? You start comparing yourself to other people because you're being told that your feelings are inappropriate. So the second common phrase you'll hear from a gaslighter is, I never said that. Or, I don't recall ever saying that. Again, this is one where this is kind of how they get away with it because people forget things, right? You've forgotten saying things, right? It's believable. You could believe that somebody would forget something. But when you're in an emotionally abusive relationship with somebody who's gaslighting you, this is consistent and it seems almost selective. It seems like they have a very selective memory. Like they'll remember all these other things, but whenever something comes up around this specific topic, I don't remember saying that. Or I don't remember that happening. It's like they have selective amnesia. And that gets you questioning whether you can trust your memory. Well, maybe I'm remembering it wrong. And they might even tell you you're remembering it wrong. So the third common phrase that a gaslighter will use is, I'm not angry, when they clearly are angry. So this happens a lot with stonewalling and the silent treatment. And it could also happen when the abusive person is yelling and getting angrier and angrier, and you can see it, you can clearly see it with your own eyes. This form of gaslighting makes you question, well, I know what I'm seeing, but why are you telling me that it's wrong? And this one, I think, is not quite as effective as the other ones because you get into patterns where you see it happening and then you'll eventually find out that the person, yes, indeed is angry, and you'll eventually find out why. So that kind of confirms what you believed. So I think this form of gaslighting is not as effective as some of the others, but you will commonly hear it from people who use various different forms of gaslighting. So the fourth phrase that you will commonly hear from a gaslighter is, it's all your fault. If they get caught with something that they shouldn't have been doing, it's going to be your fault. It's going to be your fault that they did it. It's going to be your fault that they cheated. It's going to be your fault that they hid something from you because you can't handle it. If they told you, you wouldn't be able to handle it, so it's really your fault. I would have been honest if you were more emotionally stable. The fifth phrase that you'll hear from a gaslighter is, you're broken. There's something, it's not your fault, you had a rough childhood, but you can't handle things, or you're emotionally unstable, or they'll tell you that you're not whole. And it's a lie. It is absolutely a lie because it benefits them to have you believing that. We all have issues, don't get me wrong, and we could all benefit from working on that. But if somebody is pointing out your faults, especially when all of these other things are present, if somebody feels the need to constantly remind you that there's, that you have stuff you need to work on, they're probably doing it for a reason, and that reason would be to make you feel insecure, to make you feel like you're not enough, that you have all this stuff, you got all this baggage, and you're not enough on your own. Along with that, you might often hear that nobody's gonna love you, you're lucky I put up with you, that sort of thing. And I hear this sometimes from people who are victims of emotional abuse too. They, in another video that I had, people have said, well, I've said that too. And while that is kind of understandable, it's not really something that you want to say. That shouldn't be part of any healthy relationship. The sixth phrase you might hear from a gaslighter is, this is why nobody likes you. Now, something like this, or this is why people don't want to be around you, what they're doing is kind of like triangulation, right? They're saying, this other person over here, they don't like you. And in most cases, it's not true. And even if they heard something to make them think that, that's probably their interpretation of what they heard, and it's not necessarily reality. And if they're saying that's why nobody likes you, then you know that's not true. But this one is very effective because this uses other people. It's like it's gaslighting, and it's kind of without other people's permission or consent. They're getting other people in on it. They're getting other people in on this gaslighting, and they're getting into your head and getting you to think that other people feel the same way that your abuser does. And that, unfortunately, that can be very powerful. If you're in a situation like this, and if you're hearing these phrases and you're hearing them consistently, understand that this is abuse. It's not you. So the seventh, and my favorite, not really favorite, but the seventh common phrase that you will hear from a gaslighter is, "You're petty." It comes up really often in a relationship with a covert narcissist, whatever type of relationship it is, because there's that whole death by 1,000 paper cuts thing. They abuse often so subtly. And even if it's not a covert narcissist, an overt narcissist can also use covert tactics. So if somebody's using a lot of covert tactics against you, you've probably heard some version of "you're petty," "you're childish," something along those lines. So the reason why this comes up is because what they're doing consistently, but it's so little. It's just so small. Maybe they're excluding you from something, or maybe they make, a comment, a dig in front of somebody that's important to you. But they do it consistently. They do it all the time. And you've talked to them about it ad nauseum. You just have so many conversations about this until you feel like you're blue in the face and you just banging your head up against the wall. Why don't they get it? And so they do something really small, and they do it on purpose. They do something really small that is consistent with what they've done all along, consistent with everything that you have told them bothers you, hurts you, makes you feel bad. And they do it. And then you blow up. And they sit back and say, "Wow, you're petty." This tactic, it's just so devious, because it works, especially if they do it in front of other people, because you believe that they're believing this, and they might be looking at you like, "Wow, you are petty," because it's a little thing, but you're not petty. It's because you've just dealt with this so many times and you're fed up. And they say, "Why would you blow up over something so little like this?" And they probably berate you about it, even though they're the ones who are actually doing it on purpose, which makes it really the petty behavior. They're actually the ones being petty, but they're doing it so covertly, and they're doing it, they're trying to fly under the radar, and often they do. Often they get away with it. So you end up feeling like the petty one, even though it's the other person. So the eighth common phrase is, "You can't take a joke." Now, emotionally abusive people, like narcissists, will often poke fun at you and laugh and, "Oh, it's just a joke and you can't take a joke." They might have pet names for you that are just downright mean. And, maybe you've told them, "I really don't like when you say that," or "I really don't like when you call me that." But they just continue doing it anyway, and they laugh about it, even though you never do. And it just keeps going. And they keep at it, and they keep telling you that you just can't take a joke. You've got no sense of humor. So the ninth common phrase that you'll hear from an emotionally abusive person is, "You're insecure," or "You're jealous," or a combination of both. And this comes up really, really often because emotionally abusive people often are not honest with their partners, and they are often cheaters. So when you're with somebody like that, things aren't adding up. You're constantly questioning the person about things. Maybe you've even found some evidence that they're denying. And it's easy for them to just say, "No, that's not a problem. you're the problem. It's, this is fine. There's nothing going on over here. You're just jealous. You're insecure. I actually had someone tell me once, straight face, you're jealous and insecure, but don't worry, it's not your fault. You're a woman. So the final common phrase I have for you is, if you really loved me. That kind of calls your unconditional love into question. And that's kind of what makes it gaslighting. So you think you have strong feelings for this person, but they're telling you that no, you don't. If you don't do what I want, then that means you don't love me. So they're invalidating your feelings once again. So as promised, the number one thing, the only thing you could really do in a situation when you're being gaslighted, if you can identify gaslighting in a conversation, walk away. That is the only thing you can do. When you're dealing with somebody who is maliciously gaslighting you, it's not going to go anywhere. There's nothing you can say or do that is going to get this person to own up to whatever it is they're doing. They're just not. And it's going to frustrate you and you're going to get infuriated. And they might even mess with your head depending on who this person is and how close you are to them. So it's not worth arguing at that time. If they're gaslighting you, all right, that's gaslighting. This conversation's over. We can pick it up another time if you have to. If you don't have to deal with a gaslighter, then, don't. So if you're in a relationship with somebody who is gaslighting you, or if you can relate to any of these phrases or the phases of a relationship with a gaslighter, start to pay attention, look for patterns, and you may seriously want to consider this relationship, how important it is to you, and whether it's worth what you have to lose. Because a relationship with an emotionally abusive person can really, really eat away at your sense of self-worth and your security, your happiness. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. It really does help the YouTube algorithm know which videos to show to which people. So because you like this video, it might end up showing up in somebody else's newsfeed. And it also lets me know that you like this content and maybe I should make more of it. So that's all for now, and I will see you next time.